Good day, and welcome to part 13 of our study of the book of Galatians. Today we're going to do the first 5 verses of chapter 6, so let me read them to you. Brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks himself to be something, when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one examine his own work, and then he will have rejoicing in himself alone, and not in another, for each one shall bear his own load. Paul has been talking to the churches in Galatia about following the good news, the gospel, rather than the laws that were put forth for the Jewish people, the laws of Moses and the subsequent rules and regulations that followed. So he is saying that once you are free of the law, you have liberty. You have liberty and you are no longer under the law. And he said this in the first 5 chapters. But he also said that being free and having liberty does not give you a license to do anything you wish to do. And this was explained in the last chapter fairly well. So what he's saying now is this about what we do to people who somehow have fallen back either under the law or have fallen back under some sort of sin or fault, maybe not of their own volition, but perhaps it just came upon them. And this is what he's saying. He's talking to them as brothers, as brethren. Brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, if a person is suddenly or subject to sinning or to a fault, or perhaps falling back under the law again, perhaps being unaware of it at the time, he's overtaken by this sort of idea. If someone is in this situation where they have undertaken or where they have been made or found to be in a fault, to be following the law again rather than the gospel, if they're found to be sinning, if they're in any trespass, if something has overtaken them, then he says, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness. Now the idea of this is that people who are still following the gospel message and are relatively free from having problems, if you see someone, a brother, who is suffering or who is struggling or is suffering, falling back under the guise of the law or some fault, then we should try to help them gently, without malice, without bringing it to other people who should not be aware of it, but it should be brought out in a feeling of gentleness and support and comfort. This is one of the differences, because if those who followed the law, when someone broke the law, then those people were punished. And the ones who maintained the law felt that everybody else who broke that particular rule should be punished. But Paul is saying people who fall back under some trespass, some fault, should be dealt with gently, not punished, not sought out, not criticized, but gently helped back into their norm, into the right way of thinking and of living, but in a gentle manner, pardon me, but in a gentle manner, one that is not too difficult, and one that is not too hard on the person who's suffering. So it should be done. This should be restored, brought back into a right state, in a spirit of gentleness, considering that no matter who we are not free from the temptations of sin. or the temptations of fault, or the temptations of falling back into old habits, old ways. Nobody, no matter how good they think they are, is free from this type of temptation. So, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted the same way that the person who you feel or who is having a fault or a trespass is suffering, treat them gently and bring them back, restore them with that spirit of gentleness, because you too could fall into the same trap. You too could be tempted. Bear one another's burdens. If a person is suffering, if a person is having a lot of troubles, under a heavy load of trouble or a problem, then help him along. Support him, comfort him. Try to build them up. Try to help them, even in any way, even if it's only as a listener. Just be there for them. Bear their burdens with you. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. The law of Christ is just the very simple thing that we talked about before, is to love one another, love others as you would love yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. This is the law of Christ. Do for others that you would have them, that you would wish that they would do for you. So bear one another's burdens. Build each other up. Restore each other to their rightful place, but with gentleness and with a feeling of impropriety, a feeling of just being there for a person, a feeling of doing what you can, even if it seems very little at the time, but being there, doing it with gentleness and doing it with honesty, sincerity. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks himself to be something, when he is nothing, he deceives himself. We are all in the same boat. We are all sinners. Everybody has committed problems, done things that they probably are ashamed of, would not want to be repeated. We all have the same difficulties. We are all under the same temptations. So if you think if one person feels that they are better than someone else, then they are deceiving themselves, because in God's eyes we're all the same. There is nobody that is separate or above another person. And this is what he's saying. If you think yourself to be something when he is nothing, and we are all really nothing in the whole scheme of things, then you deceive yourself. This is why you should deal with other people with gentleness and with softness and with honesty. But let each one examine his own work. You look at your own life. You look at your own activities, what you do, how you've done it. Let each person examine their own activities, their own living, and then he will have rejoicing in himself alone. Because if you've done what the Bible suggests, what God's law suggests, whatever you've done for someone else, let you examine your own activities. And if you have fulfilled some of what God's law is, then rejoice in it. Rejoice in yourself. Don't look at someone else as being inferior to you. It says in Romans 14:10, why do you judge your brother? Or why do you show contempt for your brother? For we all will stand before the judgment seat of Christ. So, no one should consider themselves better than the other person. If you just look at your own works and not consider yourself comparing to someone else, if you just look at your own works, this is what you want to rejoice in. What you have done, what you can do, and what you can do for others. This is your works. And if you have this examination, if you examine your own work, then you have rejoicing in yourself alone, but not in another, for each one shall bear his own load. You can help each other with their burdens, but in the end, they have to carry that burden themselves. You can help with someone, but in the end, what a person does, or how they act, or how they behave, is their own duty. You can help them, but you can't really carry it for them completely. So what he's saying is this: if a person falls backwards into the law, falls backwards into sin, falls into some kind of a fault, especially if that's nothing that he really saw coming, it wasn't a deliberate thing that was done. If he falls into something, then if this type of activity overtakes them, then bear with them, help them. Do it with gentleness, with kindness, with sincerity, but help them along with it. And don't be overconfident. Don't be overbearing. Don't be too self-satisfaction. Don't be too self-satisfied, because you can be tempted yourself the same way. So do it, but do it with the kind of attitude that there but for the grace of God, go you, or go I. This fulfills the law of Christ. This fulfills the law where God said, where Christ said, do unto others. Do unto others. Love one another. And if anyone thinks himself something when he is nothing, he deceives himself, because we're all on the same plane. No one is better than someone else. We are all on the same plane when it comes before God, and we all will stand before the judgment seat of God in the end. Look at yourself. Do what you think and examine what you need to do in order to satisfy the law of God, and then rejoice in it. Don't rejoice or criticize or put down someone else, but rejoice in what you do yourself. You can help with another one's burdens, but in the end we all bear our burdens ourselves. So this is really what Paul is saying in these first 5 verses. And we'll get on to the rest of the chapter 6 in the next lesson. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you next week. Bye for now.